Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 bringing to you a very special edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. And November 17th, 1996 marks 28 years ago that history was made when Dwayne Johnson made his WWF debut as Rocky Maivia at Survivor Series 1996 in Madison Square Garden and began his journey to become one of the biggest names ever in wrestling history. And for today's special edition, I am going to be discussing the success and failures of The Rock's wrestling career from November 1996 to August 2004. Now, it goes without saying that The Rock is one of the biggest names on the planet. Whether you're a wrestling fan or not a wrestling fan, everybody knows who The Rock is. He is one of the biggest actors in Hollywood. He was one of the biggest names in WWF/WWE. You name it, The Rock is a pop culture icon, and as far as I'm concerned, the biggest name ever since Hulk Hogan. And that is saying a lot, considering that Hulk Hogan helped put wrestling on the map back in the 80s to the early 90s. And I would argue that The Rock pretty much did the same sort of thing for wrestling in the late 90s to the 2000s. I would say if Hulk Hogan put wrestling on the map, I would say The Rock gave wrestling and helped put it on the map as far as mainstream appeal is concerned. So I would say that Hulk Hogan helped open the door for the wrestling business, and The Rock helped pave the way for wrestling to become more mainstream. So it would be reminiscent not to say that The Rock has had a huge impact on not just wrestling, but on the entire mainstream media circuit, as far as I'm concerned. But it would be unfair to say that The Rock's wrestling career has been smooth sailing because he didn't really get off to an amazing start. Very few wrestlers get off to a fantastic start and remain consistently brilliant throughout their career. While The Rock's wrestling career, for the most part, has been unbelievable, he did, however, get off to a very shaky start, and it looked like it was going to be curtains for him at one point. But ever the man that he is, The Rock was able to turn a negative into a positive, which he has done throughout his entire career. So, as I mentioned, The Rock made his WWF debut at Survivor Series 1996 as Rocky Maivia in Madison Square Garden, and he was part of a classic Survivor Series team, teaming up with Mark Mero, Jake Roberts, and Barry Windham as they battled the team of Hunter Hearst Helmsley, who would later go on to be known as Triple H and would also become one of Rock's most fiercest and important rivals in his career, Jerry the King Lawler, Goldust, and Crush. And The Rock would win the match, coming out on top as the sole survivor, and he was off to an amazing start. And when you look at The Rock when he first came in back at Survivor Series 1996 as Rocky Maivia, and you look at what he would go on to become later on, it's quite funny and amazing at the same time because I still remember to this day very well. He came in as Rocky Maivia. He had the white boots, blue trunks, the puffy afro hairstyle, and the feathers. And he was all smiley, like, I'm so happy to be here. And then you look at what he would become later on in his career. It's just unbelievable to think that was the same guy, all those years earlier and go on to become such a massive star. I mean, the potential was always there. He was very gifted in the ring, but yeah, the problem was at the time Dwayne Johnson debuted as Rocky Maivia, which was in November 1996. The business was starting to change. Fans were getting more rowdy. They were becoming more rude and a lot more crazier. And fans were more or less booing baby faces. So you could definitely see business was changing. Suddenly, heels were getting all the pops, and baby faces were getting booed out of the building. And unfortunately for Rocky Maivia, he would receive a ton of boos in the early part of his career. And this would lead to the debut of the legendary and infamous chant Rocky sucks. And of course, there were a few signs saying "Die Rocky Die." Oh my god! And fast forward into 1997, Rocky Maivia would make history by becoming the youngest Intercontinental Champion at 23 years old and defeated Hunter Hearst Helmsley on a Raw special called Thursday Raw Thursday. And Rocky was very happy, celebrating with the fans, saying to Michael Hayes that I'm so happy that I got this opportunity. I'm going to make the fans proud. I'm going to work hard. And, very corny babyface lines. And on the surface, you think, it's harmless. He's a guy, wants to do his best and wants to please everyone. But the fans just weren't having any of it. They just didn't want anything to do with Rocky Maivia whatsoever. And they just thought he was a bit of an idiot. And it's a shame, really, because when you look at Rocky Maivia's personality, you could clearly see that maybe this ain't going to work for him. Maybe this is going to be a short run. But to his credit, he stuck to his guns and soldiered on. He would go on to have another match against Triple H at In Your House Final Four, where he successfully retained his Intercontinental title. He would go on to have his first WrestleMania match at WrestleMania 13, where he successfully defended his Intercontinental title against the Sultan, who was actually his cousin Rikishi, competing under that name at the time. And then he would lose against Savio Vega at In Your House Revenge of the Taker. And around this time, the fans were really starting to give Rocky hell and started chanting, Die, Rocky, die. Rocky sucks, even though he was the babyface. And he would go on to face Mankind at In Your House, A Cold Day in Hell. And Mankind would go on to become one of the most important figures in The Rock's career, as The Rock and Mankind would go on to become not just opponents, but fierce enemies, and then become tag team partners and become one of the most beloved duos in wrestling history, dubbed The Rock and Sock Connection. And then shortly after, Rocky Maivia would sustain a knee injury that would keep him out of action for several months. Now, around this time, I would say that Rocky getting injured was a blessing because it was very clear that he was not cutting it as a babyface. The fans just weren't taking to him. They were booing him loudly every single week. And around 1997, heels were treated as heroes. Fans just couldn't get enough of them. Guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker, to name a few. On the surface, you look at them and you think they're heels, but they were getting cheered. Undertaker, of course, is a little bit of a different case because he was already long established as a legend, so the fans loved him no matter what. But guys like Shawn Michaels and Stone Cold Steve Austin were connecting very strongly with fans as heels. But Rocky Maivia, on the other hand, not so much because he was just a white meat babyface. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. I love you guys. I'm not going to let you down. Yeah, it wasn't cutting it. So it was quite clear that a decision had to be made and Rocky Maivia had to be repackaged. Otherwise, it was curtains. So Rocky Maivia would make his return on the August 11th, 1987 edition of Raw is War, and he would join the Nation of Domination. Now, joining the Nation of Domination was a brilliant move for Rocky Maivia, and this now marked the first time that Rocky Maivia was an official heel, and it worked. It was very refreshing. You could clearly see Rock was more comfortable. He could be himself. And one thing that we got to see during this time was how good of a talker he really was. And that was one of Rock's biggest gifts in his wrestling career. He was just dynamite on the mic. And I think a lot of people forget that, you know, Rock was so good on the mic that people forget that he was good in the ring as well. I think his mic skills kind of, how should I say, overshadowed his wrestling ability because he was such a good talker that I think his wrestling ability kind of just got ignored. People just kind of didn't really take much notice. They just wanted to hear this guy talk, and he could talk. There was no question about it. And the first heel promo that he cut set Rock on the path to becoming the man that we would know. Not quite, but he was definitely going in the right direction. He pretty much got on the mic, ripped the fans apart, saying that I didn't forget about how you treated me. So from now on, you can all go to hell. It's all about me. And it was brilliant. It was a brilliant move. And it was just one of those things that when you see a guy who isn't working as a babyface and then you turn them heel, it's such a breath of fresh air and it works because the thing with turning a babyface into a heel, you could clearly see with a wrestler, they're just more comfortable. It's more natural to them. And, you know, me personally, as great as a babyface The Rock is, I think his best work was as a heel. I mean, if you look back at those early years, around 1987 to 1988, he was just an incredible heel. He was funny, but the thing with The Rock as a heel being funny, he's not trying to make you laugh. He's trying to get under your skin, but he's so naturally gifted that you just can't help but laugh and just be drawn to the guy because he's so good at what he does. So throughout 1997, Rock was just on fire as a heel. He wouldn't quite be there yet. He wouldn't quite be the fiery heel that we would come to know later on in his career. But he was still a great heel, very entertaining, and you could clearly see, you know, Rock in the Nation. He was just so over, and he was more popular than all of the other guys. Nothing against D'Lo Brown, Godfather, or Farouk. Great talents, real tough men, but The Rock, he was just incredible. And he would cross paths with Stone Cold Steve Austin, who would go on to become one of his most iconic rivals ever. And they would go on to make a lot of history, not just for the business, but with each other as well. And around this time, Rocky Maivia was starting to talk in the third person and he was referring to himself as The Rock. So he was kind of moving away from the whole Rocky Maivia persona and really starting to slowly become the man that we would know. And his first real feud in his career, I would say, was against Ken Shamrock. I think those two had some great matches together in the early part of 1988. And I think those matches he had against Ken Shamrock really helped put him over as a heel because prior to Ken Shamrock, he was a heel, but Rock didn't really have a great opponent to get his teeth into, so to speak. Yes, he did cross paths with Stone Cold, but him and Austin were on different paths. Stone Cold was already on his way to becoming a top guy. Rock wasn't quite there yet. So I would say that his feud with Ken Shamrock really did wonders for him, and you really got to see a real vicious, mean side to The Rock's personality. So Rock got to show how versatile he really was as a performer. He can make you laugh, but he can also knock the crap out of you as well when the occasion was called for. And him and Shamrock had a great match at Royal Rumble 98. They would go on to have a fantastic match at WrestleMania 14. And Rock was really starting to win people over with his performances. He came very close to winning the Royal Rumble match in 1988. He lasted quite a long time. Him and Austin were the final two. Austin, of course, won, but just the fact that Rock made it to the end and fighting a red hot Stone Cold, you could clearly see that, okay, this guy isn't just a one trick pony. You know, the guy who made his debut at Madison Square Garden with the bad haircut. This guy is the real deal, and this guy means business. So obviously they had big plans for The Rock going forward. But after WrestleMania 14, he would kick Farouk out of the nation and declare himself as the ruler of the nation. And he would add Owen Hart to the group. And for me, this is where The Rock really started to peak as a heel. No longer was he playing second fiddle to Farouk. He was now his own man, leading the faction. And with Owen Hart in the mix, I thought Rock was just really starting to peak as a heel. And the thing about Rock's Nation with Owen Hart, it was so much better. Not knocking the Farouk led faction, they were great, but I think when Rock took it over and then brought in Owen Hart, it was just so much better. It was so much cooler. And The Rock and Owen Hart worked really well together as a team. I thought they had great chemistry, and they even challenged for the tag team titles on a couple of occasions. So I thought they had really good chemistry together. And around this time, another guy who Rock faced at the beginning of his career, he was starting to get over. He was already making a lot of noise, and that was Triple H. He just took over DX after Shawn Michaels left, and now that Rock was leading the nation and Triple H was leading DX, you knew it was only a matter of time that these two factions, especially the two leaders, were going to butt heads. Now, bear in mind, Rock and Hunter already had a little rivalry in 97, just a little one. They had a couple of matches, but I think in 98, this is where the feud really started to make a lot of noise. And Rock and Triple H, they had great chemistry together. They just fed off each other so well on the mic. Everything about it just worked. And even though they were both the complete opposites in terms of their personalities and the way they carried themselves, it was just instant. And they had some excellent matches. They had a great match at Fully Loaded in a 2 out of 3 falls match. They had one of their best matches at SummerSlam 98, the ladder match, which for me was the best match of the entire pay per view. And an interesting thing happened in that match. The Rock was the heel going into that match, but he got absolutely cheered. And Triple H still got his fair share of cheers, don't get me wrong, but The Rock just had the whole crowd behind him, and he put on an excellent performance. Even though he didn't win that match, Triple H won that ladder match. He became the Intercontinental Champion. I think The Rock came out of it the real winner because the fans cheered him, they respected him, And as I said earlier, he was really starting to win people over with his incredible performances in the ring. And I think the fans just naturally started to realize, you know what, this guy isn't an idiot. This guy can work. This guy can talk. He can back it up. He can wrestle. He's got a good look. He's the whole package. He's a cool guy. The Rock is a really cool guy. And he turned face immediately after SummerSlam 98, and the pops he would get were just incredible. And you could clearly see that, okay, this guy is going to be huge. He's going to become a huge star. And he was just red hot. And every week, the fans were just behind this guy. And he got to the point that he didn't need to be in the nation anymore because he was so popular. And at one point, it looked like he was going to become the number two guy to Stone Cold. That's how popular he was. He was knocking on Austin's door as, you know, the number one guy in the business. And fast forward to Survivor Series 1988, Rock's now 2 years in the business, and he would make history once again, but this time in a completely different way. He would defeat Mankind in the Deadly Games tournament in the finals and turn heel and join Vince McMahon's corporation. Now, I said earlier that joining the nation was a great move. It was a great move in the sense that it helped freshen up The Rock's character, repackaging him. The Rock joining Vince McMahon's corporation made him the biggest heel ever. And the promo he cut saying that I didn't forget how you treated me for those 2 years. Die, Rocky, die. I got ahead. I did what I had to do. I am no longer the people's champion. I am now the corporate champion. And this, for me, this was where Rock was really starting to come into his own as a performer. He was such a good heel. He was a good heel in the nation. Don't get me wrong. He was a great heel in the nation, but I think he became a better heel in the corporation. And anytime you're paired up with Vince McMahon, the boss, the devil himself, as JR always referred to, you're going to get heat, nuclear heat. But there was just one little problem with that. The fans just loved The Rock too much. Yes, he would get booed at certain times, but for the most part, they just loved the guy. They really did. And he went on to have a violent feud against Mankind. They had an excellent I Quit match. Might have been a tad too violent for my taste, but still did a great job in putting The Rock over as a monster heel. And they would go on to have a couple of more matches, a last man standing match at St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Then they would go on to have a ladder match the next night where The Rock would win back the WWF title. And even though around this time, Rock was winning the title and he would lose it again, by that point, he was a three-time champion. And, you know, in the span of a couple of months, he was already a three-time champion at 26 years old. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Rock had accomplished so much in such a short time that he'd been in the business. You know, you just couldn't ignore that fact. And even though he would lose the title to Mankind thanks to Austin helping him, it didn't hurt The Rock. In fact, it made him better. He still came out smelling like roses. And even though he would lose the title at WrestleMania 15 against Stone Cold, Rock was still over. He was still getting a lot of respect and love from the fans. Their WrestleMania 15 match was okay for what it was. I thought it was the best match of the pay per view. But I think with Rock and Austin, they would go on to have better matches later on. And then they would go on to have another match at Backlash 99 Rock would lose again, but his efforts really won a lot of people over, and he reached the point where he didn't need to be in a faction anymore. He was just too damn popular to be in a faction. He needed to be on his own with the fans right behind him, and he would pretty much leave the corporation after Backlash. Yeah, I know Shane fired him, but for me, whether Shane fired him or not, Rock was done with the corporation. He didn't need to be with those guys anymore. And Rock would begin his journey to become one of the most popular wrestlers in the company. And throughout 99, he would mix it up with The Undertaker. He would go on to wage war with Triple H. And he would also have a few other feuds with British Bulldog and a few other guys as well. But regardless of who he was facing, Rock was just getting more and more popular as the weeks would go on. And something happened in the late part of 99, which would pretty much set The Rock up for life. There was a wide space open, and Rock saw an opportunity, and the rest is history. So at Survivor Series 99, by this point, Rock pretty much was done with feuding with everyone. He pretty much feuded with Billy Gunn, which quite frankly didn't go anywhere. But something happened at Survivor Series 99. Stone Cold was forced to take time off due to a neck injury, so they had him run over, and he was pretty much out of action for the foreseeable future. So with Stone Cold gone, Undertaker away, The Rock became the number one man as we headed into the new millennium, the year 2000. This, for me, was when The Rock really became the man that we would know. He was already hot in 98. In 99, he became even hotter. 2000, Rock was the man. And the popularity that Rock got in 2000, he carried the company. He really did. And he became a mainstream star, appearing on Saturday Night Live. He was waging a legendary war against Triple H over the WWF title. And Rock was the man. He was having excellent matches against Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, Triple H, as I mentioned already. The Rock was just untouchable. He really was. And you could clearly see it. Okay, Stone Cold's out. Will we see him or not is irrelevant. This is the guy. And Rock really made everyone around him look better. I'm not saying Stone Cold didn't. He made everyone better, but I think with The Rock, he just helped elevate everyone. And people have always said that Rock is one of the most unselfish guys in the business. I couldn't agree more. Rock put everyone over. He made everyone look good. Nobody looked inferior next to The Rock. Even if Rock won, his opponent still came out looking great. And that's what I always liked about The Rock. He elevated everyone where everyone got better working through him, whether it was in a promo or in a match or a segment. It didn't matter. You knew if you were working with The Rock, you were made. And if you could hang with The Rock, then you were well on your way to becoming a top guy. And the stuff that he did with Mick Foley as the Rock and Suck connection, tremendous stuff. Really got to see Rock's comedic side. And I would say that Mick Foley definitely played a part in helping to put The Rock on the map. Not just through their matches, but through their promo work as well. And it clearly worked. And 2000, I still say to this day, was The Rock's best year ever. Whether or not Stone Cold was there, that's another conversation for another time. But I think with Undertaker and Stone Cold not in the picture, Rock had the whole kingdom to himself. He just made everything better. And I definitely feel business got better with The Rock in the number one spot, and everyone got better. Everyone benefited greatly. The money, the ratings. There was not a single guy in the world who didn't want to be like The Rock. Chicks loved The Rock. Guys respected The Rock. He really came into his own that year. He was putting on excellent matches with everyone. He was just on fire. He would go on to win the Royal Rumble match in 2000. He would then face the Big Show at No Way Out 2000 in the number one contenders match after Big Show accused him of cheating. Rock would lose, then he would win back his number one contender spot, and then he would go on to headline WrestleMania 2000, and it was booked to be a fatal four-way elimination match with a McMahon in each corner. This is where the failure comes into his career through no fault of Rock's. It should have been a singles match, The Rock versus Triple H, one on one for the WWF title. Biggest face ever versus the biggest heel ever. Rock goes over, wins the title, and has his big WrestleMania moment. Rock got screwed at WrestleMania 2000 thanks to Vince. This would be the first of many. And he wouldn't really get his big moments until Backlash 2000 when he defeated Triple H thanks to a huge surprise assist from Stone Cold in one of the biggest moments ever. And it was great, but I really felt that that should have been at WrestleMania. So, in a way, you could kind of look at Backlash 2000 as reverse WrestleMania. All of the matches at the pay per view was a WrestleMania with Rock getting the big win over the evil heel. He would lose the WWF title back to Triple H at Judgment Day in an excellent Iron Man match. For me, as a fan of the Rock and Triple H feud, the Iron Man match is my all time favourite. I love the ladder match, it's up there, but that Iron Man match was excellent because it was fast paced, non stop action, didn't let up once, it wasn't boring. For me, it's the best Iron Man match ever. And I'm not knocking Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. That was a great match from a wrestling point of view, but it went on a little bit too long. The Rock versus Triple H, there was no dull moments. Even when Undertaker came out as the American badass and just beat everybody up, it didn't take away the fact that it was still an excellent match. And I think when you put the two right people together, the right opponents in the ring in that sort of match, you know it's going to be good. And The Rock and Triple H were just perfect for that kind of match. Rock with his fast paced style, Triple H with his slow, methodical style, but he could still be fast when he needed to be. It just worked. And I think around that time, The Rock and Triple H really brought out the best in each other. They really helped carry the company. More so Rock, I would say. I think Rock carried it just a little bit more. But it was great. Excellent stuff. And this is without Stone Cold and Undertaker. Even Kane was not around for some months. It was just those two. Yeah, you still had others, but it was mainly about them two. It was just really good. It was different, but it was really good. Rock would win back the WWF title at King of the Ring 2000 when he pinned Vince. Go on to have an excellent feud against Chris Benoit, which I thought was one of Rock's best matches ever. It really helped push The Rock and his intensity level and really made him dig down deep. And Benoit was presented as a dangerous threat to The Rock's title reign. And it really made Rock think to himself, okay, if I'm going to have any chance in hanging with this guy and surviving, I've got to play his game. I've got to wrestle his style. And he did. And you really got to see how versatile Rock was as a wrestler. I mean, I always thought he was a good wrestler, but I think mixing it up with a technical marvel like Benoit, Rock showed everyone that he was no slouch in the ring and that with the right opponents, he can mix it up with the best of them. And he really opened a lot of eyes that he could hang with a real technical marvel like Benoit. Rock would go on to successfully retain his WWF title when he defeated Triple H and Kurt Angle in a triple threat match at SummerSlam 2000, and then he would go on to retain his WWF title in a fatal four-way match when he defeated The Undertaker, Kane, and Chris Benoit at Unforgiven 2000. And Rock's title reign from June 2000 to October 2000 for me was the best title reign of his entire career. He was putting on excellent matches, mixing up with everyone, and he was really coming into his own as a top guy. And he would drop the WWF title to Kurt Angle at No Mercy 2000, and he went on to make Kurt Angle a star. And this is what I said earlier. Everyone who worked with The Rock in the ring not only benefited greatly, but they would go on to become a bigger star in their own right. And for The Rock to essentially pass the torch onto Kurt Angle and puts him on the map as the next top guy was nothing but pure class. And not just that, The Rock and Kurt Angle, even though they only had two singles matches on pay per view, No Mercy 2000 and No Way Out 2001, they were excellent. Those two had amazing chemistry. And as I said earlier, no matter whether The Rock lost or won, everyone involved got better. And, you know, for a guy like The Rock to do business, see a guy like Kurt Angle who was really on fire that year, and to basically have someone like The Rock tell him, you know what, it's your turn now. I've had a good run at the top. It's your time. Go for it. Nothing but pure class. And it didn't hurt Rock's popularity at all. Far from it. In fact, Rock in 2000, as I said earlier, he was just on another level of popularity. Even when Stone Cold came back, both of them were on equal footing, but I just feel that The Rock was just a little bit more popular, just a little bit more. And, the debate would rage on for years. Who was more popular, Stone Cold or The Rock? Now, in 98, definitely Austin, hands down. 99, I would still say Rock was very popular, but I think Austin still had the edge. 2000, dangerously close, but I think Rock might just have the slight edge, just a bit more. But there's not much in it. And by 2001, oh yeah, these two were the biggest baby faces ever. And they would continue to run into each other throughout the late part of 2000. And Rock would mix it up with Rikishi at Survivor Series 2000. Rock would also compete in his first and only Hell in a Cell match at Armageddon in a classic six-man Hell in a Cell. Even though Rock didn't win, he still came out looking like the man. Royal Rumble 2001, Rock came very close to winning, but he didn't win, obviously. He would continue to butt heads with Austin. Rock would regain the WWF title at No Way Out 2001 against Kurt Angle in a great match. And then we get to WrestleMania 17, and Rock Austin really were the two biggest baby faces ever. And I feel by April 2001, Rock was just really coming into his own as a huge star. And I'm not knocking Austin. He was great. He was on fire that year, but I think Rock was just a little bit more higher up because the thing with The Rock, what gives him a slight edge over Stone Cold, he was crossing over into mainstream. He was making all the television appearances, appearing on comedy sketches, chat shows, you name it. Rock was really becoming a household name. And Stone Cold, even though he'd done a few little TV guest appearances, he didn't really cross over into mainstream appeal like The Rock did. And Rock would lose the WWF title to Stone Cold at WrestleMania 17. He would get destroyed the next night on Raw during a steel cage match when Triple H, Vince, and Stone Cold joined forces and just basically murdered him. But it didn't hurt The Rock. In fact, I would say Rock just got even more popular, if that was possible. I mean, you look at it, 2001, and put it up against when he first came in, 1996, and now come to 2001. Rock was just on another level of popularity. He really was. So Rock would take a hiatus from WWF. He would be gone for 4 months. In storyline, he was suspended by Vince McMahon, but in real life, this was to take Rock off TV as he would go on to promote The Mummy Returns, where he would play the Scorpion King, and he was in that movie for 10 minutes and then come back as the main villain at the end. And he was also filming the spin off movie, The Scorpion King, which would come out in 2002. And it was clear that Hollywood was knocking on Rock's door. And obviously, Rock went on to star in The Mummy Returns and then The Scorpion King, which, as I said, came out the following year. And it was very clear that, Rock was destined to become a huge movie star. Wrestling was still in his blood. He missed the wrestling business. The wrestling business missed him even more. And, Rock's popularity outside of wrestling was just even bigger. Wow. Who'd ever thought that the goofy guy with the bad haircut and the feathers, who came out at Madison Square Garden in 1996, would go on to become one of the main leading figures in Hollywood? Mad. Just absolutely mad. So during Rock's time away from WWF, you had the Invasion, ECW and WCW coming in. Stone Cold was already a heel, and he would join the Alliance. Kurt Angle stepped up as a mega babyface. Chris Jericho stepped up. It was an interesting time because this was the first time ever since Rock made his debut that he was away and away for a long time. Yes, he was away when he got injured in '97, but he did come back quite quickly. But this was the first time in a long time that Rock was off TV, and there was a lot of concern about, well, is he coming back? Is he done? Thankfully, he wasn't done. The Rock would return after Invasion, where he had to choose which side he was going with, WWF or the Alliance, and he rock bottomed both Vince and Shane McMahon, and he would make his choice, and he declared that he was staying with WWF, and we would have to wait a little bit longer before we would see him and Stone Cold mix it up. He would go on to have an entertaining feud with Booker T, who he defeated for the WCW World Title. At SummerSlam 2001, he would feud with Booker T and Shane McMahon. Over the WCW title, he would feud with Chris Jericho, and they would go on to have a great match at No Mercy 2001. And Rock was teasing a heel turn. He didn't turn heel, obviously, and Jericho came out of that looking like $1 million. He would defeat The Rock for the WCW title. And again, what I said before, everyone who faces The Rock in the ring comes out looking better. And he definitely helped play an important role in helping to get Chris Jericho over in a big way. And those two had some amazing matches and they had great chemistry. They really did. Very underrated. I don't think a lot of people talked about their feud that much, but I thought those two were gold together. And they had some really good matches and some great promos as well. Rock would play an important role at Survivor Series 2001, helping to put the Alliance out of business when he came out as the sole survivor and pinned Stone Cold to score the final fall. And then he would drop the WCW World title to Chris Jericho at Vengeance 2001. And then he would lose a rematch against Chris Jericho at the Royal Rumble 2002. He would defeat The Undertaker at No Way Out 2002. And then Rock would go on to make history when he faced Hollywood Hulk Hogan in an epic icon versus icon match at WrestleMania 18. And this came about when Vince McMahon brought the NWO in, and Rock made the challenge to Hogan, and Hogan, of course, accepted. And something very unique and strange happened in that match. WrestleMania 18 was in Toronto, Canada. Hollywood Hulk Hogan came out, got the biggest pop ever, and The Rock came out and he got booed. He got absolutely booed out of the building. And an interesting thing to point out here, this would mark the second WrestleMania pay per view in a row that The Rock got booed. Now, when Rock faced Stone Cold at WrestleMania 17, he did get booed, but he did get more cheers because it was in Texas. It's Stone Cold's hometown, so you expect that. But the fans still cheered for The Rock a lot more, especially when Vince McMahon got involved. But with WrestleMania 18 against Hollywood Hulk Hogan, The Rock just got savagely booed out of the building. And Rock, being ever the pro, turning that negative into a positive, he turned heel midway through the match. So his attitude was, right, you want to boo me? You want to make me a heel? Fine, I'm going to be a heel. Now watch what I'm going to do. And too bad if you don't like what I'm going to do to Hulk Hogan. And I would say that that match against Hogan, Rock carried Hogan to possibly Hogan's best match he's ever had. And you look at the opponents Hogan's faced, apart from Randy Savage and Mr. Perfect, none of Hogan's opponents were that great, to be honest. Rock, on the other hand, he's so versatile, so smooth. Yeah, of course, he's much younger than those guys. That plays its big part as well. But he can do anything and just make it work. And as I said, he can turn a negative into a positive. And the way he made Hogan look good, selling for him, facial expressions, just everything. Rock was just so good. And I would go on to say, and this is a pretty big thing I'm going to say, I would go on to say that Rock was Hogan's best opponent ever. I mean, can you name any guys who could do what The Rock did for him in the ring? I can't think of any. Yeah, he's faced a lot of big names, but just because you face big names doesn't mean they're good matches. But Rock, he really helped make Hogan look good. I mean, Hogan at that time was, what, 48 years old? And Rock was in his 20s. I think Rock in that match, he must have been nearly 28 years old. He was not far from 30. He was still a young guy, really. And to carry Hogan the way he did, put him over. Even though Rock won that match, Hogan became Hulkamania again. And that's thanks to The Rock. Even though Rock got booed, he still managed to come out as a winner and make his opponent look like a winner too. So, in a sense, it wasn't a case of, oh, Rock won because he was better. No, the fans won. Rock came out of it looking great. Hogan came out of it looking great. As I said already, anyone who works with The Rock, you're made. You're going to benefit greatly because Rock's one of the most unselfish guys in the wrestling business. There's not many guys who would do what The Rock would do for opponents. I think the only other people who are very unselfish is Jericho, Taker, definitely Kane, Mick Foley, and Ric Flair, and Sting, and Angle as well. I've definitely got to put Kurt Angle in that conversation. Even Shawn Michaels, maybe not in the early part of his career, but in the later part, definitely wasn't afraid of putting guys over for the good of the business. But wow, unbelievable match. So around this time, fans were Still cheering for The Rock, but you could definitely sense something was in the air. Now, as I said earlier, he was booed in Texas at WrestleMania 17 in 2001, but I put that down to as that was Stone Cold's hometown. But Rock still got quite a lot of cheers because he was winning people over with his incredible performances in the ring. WrestleMania 18 in 2002 against Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Again, I put that down to as it was Toronto, Canada, the same place where he faced Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6. And, you know, it was just like the King had come back home after many years of being absent. But Rock still won a lot of people over, and he still got quite a good amount of cheers. But there was definitely something in the air. But we wouldn't really find out until months later how the fans really felt about The Rock. So we had the draft. Rock was drafted to SmackDown. He would take another hiatus as he would go on to promote his brand new movie, The Scorpion King. And by this point, I would say that The Rock pretty much morphed into a part time wrestler. So he was no longer full time. He was no longer on the show every week like he was before. Yes, he did go away in 2001 when he was promoting The Mummy Returns, but he was still very much a full time guy when he came back. He was still around every week from July 2001 up to April 2002. So he was still there quite a lot. But after that, he was not on TV as much. He was away more, doing more movie promotions, more chat show appearances, you name it. Brock was a part time guy, so he was doing wrestling and doing movies. And this was starting to frustrate fans because fans were slowly starting to turn on The Rock. They were looking at him as a sellout, looking at him as, oh, so now that you're a big movie star, you don't want to know us wrestling fans. But Rock came back in June 2002 after Stone Cold walked out on Raw and cut a very passionate and fiery promo about guys wanting to be there every single week. And if you don't want to be here, get the F out. Great stuff. And Rock went on to declare that WWE was now his home. And fans were like, okay, so the guy does care about us. He does love the wrestling business. So Rock would mix it up with The Undertaker and Triple H at King of the Ring 2002. He would return to action officially at Vengeance 2002 in a classic triple threat match against The Undertaker and Kurt Angle, and he would win his seventh WWE title. And he'd already made his return on SmackDown just a couple of weeks before. And then Rock would go on to face Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam 2002 in one of the most biggest and important matches of all time. Rock got loudly booed in that match, far more than he did against Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18. Rock passed the torch on to Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar became the new WWE champion, and Rock done his job. He put over the new guy and made him into the next big new star. A real testament to the man that The Rock is. And the fans made it very clear that they were frustrated with The Rock. They had enough of him coming in and out all the time, and they already got wind that The Rock was leaving after SummerSlam 2002. So the fans just basically let him have it, so to speak. So The Rock would end up taking another hiatus, and he would be gone for most of the second half of 2002, and he would return in January 2003. He would make an appearance via satellite at Raw's 10th anniversary, where the fans just absolutely booed him out of the building. and he would return just a couple of weeks later after the Royal Rumble 2003 with a brand new look. He shaved all his hair off and debuted a new tattoo. And this was the beginning of my favourite and probably the greatest rock persona of all time, Hollywood Rock. And I did a separate video a while ago about is Hollywood Rock the greatest heel run of his career? I would say yes. Absolutely. 100% yes. Hollywood Rock was phenomenal. Bear in mind, it only lasted 3 months. About 3 months it lasted. As great as a heel The Rock was during the Nation and Corporation days, a little bit different. Hollywood Rock was just fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. And for me, Hollywood Rock was like an extension of his Hollywood persona. You know, this spoilt, bratty movie star going around telling people, I'm a big movie star now. I don't need you guys. You know, I come to entertain you and you don't appreciate me. Go to hell. You don't need me. You know, I don't need you. You need me more. It's just classic stuff. It really was. And for me, The Rock, by this point, he'd been in the business for nearly almost 6 years, whether he was full time or part time. When Rock was on TV, you knew he was in for a damn good show. Whether he was in the ring or on the mic, whatever he was doing, you knew that when Rock was on the show, it was going to be the highlight of the night. To steal the pun from Chris Jericho, Rock was excellent. He would face Hulk Hogan again in a rematch, at this time at No Way Out. Rock won. He would jump to Raw and defeat Stone Cold in what would turn out to be Stone Cold's final match at WrestleMania 19. He would face Goldberg in Goldberg's first ever WWE match. And Rock really made Goldberg look good. He really did a fantastic job in making Goldberg look like the monster from his old WCW days. He really did. And one thing I was really pleased about with Hollywood Rock, not just Hollywood Rock, but The Rock specifically, he finally got the win over Stone Cold because that bothered me so much. Probably more than the feud with Triple H. Rock was just never able to get a definitive win. Stone Cold was always winning all of their matches. It bothered me so much, but I'm really glad he finally got the win over Stone Cold because he deserved it. He really did. Stone Cold wouldn't have got anything if he beat The Rock for a third time, other than the fact he would have been 3-0. My God. But I'm really glad that Rock finally got the win over Stone Cold, and I'm really glad that Rock was Stone Cold's final opponent. Made perfect sense. So even though, once again, Rock would lose a match, he would still come out as a winner, and his opponent looked even better. And I would go on to say Goldberg's best match ever in his WWE run was against The Rock. He certainly had the longest match ever in his career, you know, but Rock made him look like a monster. He really sold the hell out of Goldberg's spears and really made it look painful. So Rock would go on yet another hiatus, but this time, you know, fans understood and respected what he was doing. And as I said, Hollywood Rock was so good as a heel that the fans just loved him anyway. Even though they were annoyed with him for the fact that he was doing the movie thing, but The Rock was so good at his job, so good in his role, no pun intended, that the fans just couldn't help but like him again. It's like, okay, we still don't like you, but you're so good. You're so good. We forgive you. So he would make another appearance in June 2003 on the highlight reel when he helped Booker T beat up Chris Jericho and Christian, and Rock was back as a proper babyface. He was still acting like Hollywood Rock, but the fans were just happy to have him back. And then after that, we wouldn't see him anymore till December 2003 when he came to Mick Foley's rescue and beat up La Resistance. And Rock, by this point, I would say after 7 years in the business, he was starting to really move away from wrestling. We were starting to see him a whole lot less. So his appearances were getting shorter and shorter, but they were still really special when we did see him. Rock would return in March 2004 to assist Mick Foley against Evolution members Randy Orton, Batista, and Ric Flair, and they would have a 2-on-3 handicap match at WrestleMania 20, Rock and Sock Connection versus Evolution. And for The Rock to come back, because he didn't have to, but for The Rock to come back and have a match against Evolution, putting over Evolution, more specifically Randy Orton and Batista, meant a lot because that really says to me that this was a big deal for The Rock. His attitude was, I'll come back if there's something worth coming back for. And a match against Evolution was definitely worth coming back. He made everyone in that match look good. He elevated everybody. He really did. And that's what I said earlier. Rock can elevate everything and everyone around him, and everyone comes out of it looking better. And that was pretty much Rock's final match, you know, at WrestleMania 20 was it. Although no one made it official that this was Rock's last match, it pretty much was. So for him to go out on his back, put over the new upcoming guys, just like he did a few years earlier with Brock Lesnar, very classy. A very classy thing to do. And we would see Rock make two more appearances in 2004. He would assist Eugene in May 2004 when he helped beat up Lance Cade and Jonathan Coachman. And Rock would assist Tajiri and Rhino in August 2004, beating up the coach during the whole Diva Search thing. And that was it. Rock was gone, never to be seen again until officially 2011. So you think about that for a second. Rock debuted in 1996 and then leaves for good as a wrestler. Yeah, he had his last match in March 2004, but his last ever appearance was August 2004. So you think about that 7 years. That's not that long when you look at guys like Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, and Ric Flair, and even Triple H, who have had very, very long careers in wrestling. Rock's career, when you look at it, his whole run from 1996 to 2004 only lasted 7 years. That's quite short when you compare it to those guys who I mentioned. But the thing with The Rock, with his career, he did so much in such a short time. Even though he got off to a very shaky start with the whole Rocky Maivia persona and turning it from a negative into a positive, he accomplished so much to go from having a bad, goofy gimmick to one of the biggest names ever on the planet. It's just an amazing transition. If you said to me that guy with a goofy haircut and feathers was going to be one of the biggest movie stars on the planet, I would have laughed you out of the room and said, oh, please, no one's going to take that guy seriously. But I was proven wrong. And that's the thing about The Rock's career. He was always proving people wrong. He was always taking a negative and turning it into a positive, and always freshening up his character, changing his look, never doing the same things twice. And take, for example, the boos. SummerSlam 2002, he got booed during his match against Brock Lesnar. What did he do? He didn't draw it out any longer. He came straight back, turned heel, and the fans, not even within a month or two, they were cheering for him all over again. And that is a testament to The Rock's ability. He's always listening. Even when things aren't getting stale, even when things are going well, he thinks, right, it's time to change now. I've done this now. Let's do something else. And that's an amazing gift to have, to know the exact time when to turn face or when to turn heel, when to change his character, never outstaying his welcome with anything. And I really respect Rock for doing that. I think that's one of his best gifts that he ever has, is knowing the exact time when to change. Because we'll use another example. John Cena had the same gimmick for like 100 years, and the fans just got sick of it. Rock never got to that point because he was always like, okay, time to change now. Because Rock's thinking, okay, if I'm feeling stale, then the fans are probably feeling stale before me. I can't afford that to happen. Got to change now. Brilliant. 7 years. It's not really long when you think about it. But, Rock was a 9 time world champion, intercontinental champion, Royal Rumble winner, multiple time tag team champion, 3 WrestleMania main events, you know, excellent feuds against Triple H, Angle, Austin, you name it. Rock done it all. He really did it all. And to accomplish what The Rock did in that time, it's impressive. It really is. To go from being a goofball with a bad haircut to one of the most popular guys of all time. Unbelievable stuff. I think I can even remember from 2000 to 2002, Rock was probably the most popular wrestler of the new millennium. I don't think anyone could touch him as far as popularity. That period, he was untouchable. He really was. But wow, he really came a long way from Rocky Maivia to The Rock, to the man that we know now, essentially. So, in terms of the success and failure of The Rock's career, apart from Rocky Maivia, which was a failure through no fault of his, that was just how it was at the time. I would say The Rock's entire career has been a complete success. I can't think of many failures. He put everyone over. He had great matches, always did the job, and never had a bad match. I don't think I could ever remember sitting there and saying, I didn't really like that match of The Rock. Didn't think it was that good. He never had a bad match. He always gave it his all. Had great promos, great feuds, great segments, everything. Boom, boom, boom. A complete success. No failures whatsoever. Rock always did the right thing in his career, pretty much from the beginning, near enough. When he saw things were getting a little bit stale or things weren't working, boom, switched it up. So yeah, I would definitely say a complete success. No failures. None whatsoever. The only thing I would have probably have wished in The Rock's career, I wished that he won a WrestleMania main event. I really wished that he won the title in the main event. I think he deserved that big moment. Nothing against the big moments he had at Backlash 2000. It was great, one of his all time best, but I really wish that he got that big moment at WrestleMania, even if it was just one time only. I think he deserved it that much because one of the most popular and hardworking guys, he deserved to have a big moment like that. And another thing as well, I never ever heard anybody say a bad word about The Rock. Sure, you'd hear people say bad things about guys like Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Flair sometimes, Stone Cold once in a while. Never heard a bad word about The Rock. Even like with someone like Taker as well. Never heard anyone say anything bad about him either. And Rock earned the respect and love of all of his fellow wrestlers and fans worldwide. No one had anything negative to say about The Rock. So that alone makes The Rock even more great, no pun intended, was the fact that everyone loved and respected him. So that's all I can really say, really. So, as I said, Rock's entire career, even though it lasted a total of 7 years, you know, 5 years full time, 2 years part time, what can you say, really? He did it all. A complete success. So that's going to be it from me. I am going to wrap this up now. How do you look at The Rock's career? Do you look at it as a complete success or do you look at it as a complete failure? What was your thoughts on his debut as Rocky Maivia? Do you think it was a little bit silly? What was your favourite feud involving The Rock? Was it against Triple H, Mankind, Stone Cold, Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle? What about his feuds with The Undertaker? Did you enjoy them? Did you enjoy his feuds against Chris Benoit? And what was your favourite promo of The Rock's? Did you enjoy his comedic stuff with Mankind as The Rock and Sock Connection? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below. And I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. So until then, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.